Right, everyone. Thanks for coming. What's in the menu for today? We're going to talk a bit about two libraries, Lombok and Javaslang, which actually has been renamed to Vavr, since apparently Oracle have an issue with things that start with Java. They seem to own it. I brought a couple of stickers, so feel free to take a couple. But let's start with Lombok. Java has a well-deserved bad reputation for being verbose, and with good reasons. Let's look at a really simple sample class that has just three properties: first name, last name, age. We have to define the constructor. We have to, and this is just for an immutable class that only has getters. Getters, we have to define equals and hash code. As the number of fields increases, it gets more and more complex. Some IDEs kind of automate this for you, but it's still there, and you have to do it. In languages like Scala, you have this thing called case classes, where this is to get exactly the same results. That's all you have to write. Everything else is generated for you in the background. However, with Lombok, there's a couple of things we can do. So Lombok provides source code annotations that when the project is built, it processes the source code and generates all those boilerplate for you. Case classes also have another advantage. You can create a copy of an immutable value while retaining all the other values. So if I just want to increase my age to 39, which will happen in a couple of days, so all I have to do is set the age to 39 and all the other fields are copied. Sorry.
It's not the older Miguel, it's the new one.
Yeah, that is older. Good catch.
There are two records.
Hmm?
There are two records.
Two records, yeah.
Two Miguels.
Yeah, this is the older. Those are different records.
Is this
However, they share,
The same name.
because this also strings are immutable, they share exactly the same strings. They don't have to be copied.
Is this a shallow copy or a deep copy?
It's a deep copy. A deep copy, however, so if it had like nested fields, it would copy the references. However, because the values are immutable, you would only need to copy the top level.
It depends on the members, if they are available for reference.
Yeah. Well, if it's a primitive type, it's just setting the value, it's not really copying it. But anyway. With Lombok, we also have a singular feature that's still experimental at the moment because they don't really like the name reader. I don't know if it's because of Minecraft or something, but this is what we can do. The same class and with value. I want to be one, but with age set to 39. There you go. New person.
So they try to make it immutable.
No, it's immutable. Value is immutable. You cannot change any of the fields after the object has been created. So you get an immutable object as it should be for free with the proper toString, equals, hash code, getters. You can also do a couple of more interesting stuff, which I think just to annotate objects with no code. Which funnily enough, I don't think you can do that with case classes in Scala. Case classes in Scala would have to take a no value to it.
But you can do, but you need to specify the
no.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. So if you try to pass a null value, which is a common cause of problems, to create an immutable value with a null value, this will throw a null pointer exception, just to keep you honest. So how do I use this? Well, it's actually quite simple. Just add the Lombok dependency to your project. This is using Gradle syntax. There are way more source code annotations you can use. I just mentioned a couple. favorites. To integrate this with your IDE, you just have to enable annotation processing in a Java project. And if you're using IDEA, then install the Lombok plugin that makes sure that whatever you're editing in the IDE already takes into account the generated source code, and then it becomes transparent.
But it's normal Java ID that you add the Lombok plugin.
Yep. No. Yes. Well, however, you don't need an IDE to use this. You can build it from the command line. So if you build a project from the command line, all you need is this. You don't need the IDE for that. However,
but it's a Java project, or
it's a Java project using Rebel as the build tool in this case. You could do it in Maven too, but the setup would be slightly a bit more complex. But it's not a big deal. Oh, well, enough for something completely different. Let's talk about a bit Vavr, which I think since they had to rename the logo, the author came up with a really cool punchline, turning Java upside down. Vavr provides something that's sorely missing from the Java language, tuples, for example. Sometimes we don't really want to create a new type, we just want to grab a couple of values together. For example, while we're processing the list of values. Tuples allow us to do that. And there's a hidden thing there, which is another feature from Lombok. Can anyone notice? There's something there that's not really in Java, or you can't do in Java. What? Tuple is just the Vavr library, and just a normal function call.
Equal sign.
Well, the equals is just regular Java. It's actually val. There's no such thing in Java, and you can use type inference. So this is actually providing type inference in Java, just by providing this. So you don't. This is especially useful when you're writing tuples and nested tuples, because you have to write tuple of integer, string, and like the really long generic chain, and forget about that. These get replaced in compile time. While you're writing in the IDE, you can make sense of that. No problem at all. Well, this is not Scala level of type inference, so you can only do type inference on initializer expressions. So it will take the type of this expression and set it here.
But that map is not Java, right? Is it Java? You can pass functions like that?
Yep, that's Lambdas. Lambdas from Java 8. Most people don't use this syntax, and by the way, this is a method reference.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's anything funny there? You can change partial values of a tuple just by referring to their fields, and this will create a new tuple. So it kind of looks like Scala even. It's not that bad. So another thing that Vavr provides is way less clutter when you're using processing streams. So in Java you would have to write a stream, and you can do, let's say we would have to filter everyone that has more than 20 years old on a list. We have to provide the collectors, and then we have to pass a stream, then collect, and then provide the collector method.
There's a tool list, I think, already. In a stream, you can just say, instead of collector list, I think you can say just tool list.
Yeah, true. So it's not that bad, but Vavr is still simpler.
Yes, sure.
Because it's just filter and makes sense. You don't even have to get a stream from the list. It's just it has all the
Type
operator. Yeah, not the type, but the operator. So lister has filter. Okay, list is a value, and the value has filter, and map, flat map, all those operations. There's another really thing that's missing in Java, which is immutable containers, some people will say, well, wait a minute, but Java has unmodifiable list that's immutable, surely. So that's part of the API. What do you think will happen here?
You will add that.
Any more guesses? Has anyone tried to add a value to an unmodifiable list?
That's not.
Yeah. Okay, that's the thing. So if you try to add a value to the maybe immutable, it will throw. However, you can always add to the other list, because the unmodifiable list is not really an immutable collection. It's just a wrapper over an existing list. So if you modify the existing list, your immutable list is no longer changing. So sucks. List is in Vavr. I should have updated the comment, but the rename was just a couple of weeks ago.
So it would be affected or not affected if...
It was. So the size of the immutable list became 4. So I've added a 0 to the inner list. So the list was... this is how you create an unmodifiable list in Java. So you pass the original list, and it basically blocks the add operation. If you try to invoke it directly here, it will throw. However, you can always modify the underlying list freely. So that means you're lying to the interface is lying. Listings, Vavr, and pretty much all the other containers are immutable. So whenever you add an element to a list, you get a new list with that element added. Same thing applies to sets, maps, queues, etc. The big thing with immutable containers is that you can freely share them in multi-threaded code, and you don't have to worry about modifications taking place because they're immutable, they don't change. So a couple of what's on the menu. So this is kind of immutable containers that we have. For sequences, same thing for sets and maps. Kind of maps really closely the Scala collections. But you might be thinking, so if we have like a really long list and I add a new value to the list to make the list immutable, surely I would have to copy the whole thing over to make it immutable. However, we can use structural sharing to make the process quite efficient. So we have this list. This is like a reference to the start of the list. So the head. I've omitted the empty tail null. What do you think would be the representation of adding an element to the list?
Adding an element
to the list. So if I wanted to have the list,
create a new list.
Yeah. So if I added 0 to this list at the beginning, what would be the physical layout in memory of this?
I think it
It
would
will introduce a new.
No, it's just this. So in fact, the list 2 is just the list 1. It's just 0 and adding the list 1. So this list remains unchanged and they share the values. However, if you add an element to the end, you would have to copy them all. Not all operations can be made efficient in the same way.
I didn't get it. Like it creates two lists, or it creates the second one and pointing them to the first.
Well, this list was already there to begin with, and it creates a new list, but only 2 allocations take place. List add one element, and this element then points to the other one. But because this list is transverse in this direction, you can freely share, so you can add as elements as you like, but this list can remain unchanged.
Yeah, that's the point.
Because they share the values.
So if now you add the value to list 1, it won't reflect on list 2. Yeah.
Yep.
This is ecology.
Because if you don't really add a value to the list 1, you get a new list with that value added.
Yeah.
But if this is immutable.
Yeah.
Can you add between 1 and 2?
Sorry?
Can you add a value between 1 and 2?
1 and 2. No, you will get a new list that will then point that reuses
one,
all
okay.
one from 2 to 3.
Compiler will
No, this is the structure. The structure of the list. It's how it.
you can get in the middle.
I mean,
No, you don't have
it
it.
is
You
ecologic
always create new lists.
because we save place. We use the first list to
We always create some new lists.
prepare
If you want
to the list.
maybe when you want to create a new list.
yeah. Well, and there are more complex algorithms to make this work efficiently for things like maps, sets, queues, etc. There's a really cool talk on immutability and Lance's operations. I think it's made by Json. So follow this link or search for it on YouTube. It's really cool. So it really shows for given, I think, maps, lists, etc., how the layout of immutable structures takes place in memory. So it's really cool. Another very good is function memoization. What do you think this code here will output?
Once I was here.
Alright.
Yeah.
Any guesses?
I was here twice.
Yes, that's correct, because it will take this function, and this function is immutable. It will generate a new function that will have like an extra ability. Whenever you call it, it will remember the last return value and reuse it, and won't call the underlying function. Well, I've already called it, I don't need it. So you can use this to optimize expensive calls in a really easy way, so you don't have to write any code for the
The last, I didn't see the last two.
Yeah.
Behind his head.
Yeah, right. Okay, another important thing. This is a really a biggie, and it's something that I think Java programmers don't really think about. Which is like, how should we deal? How can we deal with exceptions in a composable way? So let's imagine that we want to count the number of duplicate lines in a list of files. What would you do in Java 8? So let's assume we would have a list of files. It could be arbitrarily large, but let's assume it is on 33. We could map over the list of strings to get the path, then we could map to get the lines, and we could do a fall and add the elements as we go. But what's the problem here?
If anything fails.
No, actually, anyone tries to guess? No? Huh? So you're so.
No, I was saying the same as Nuno. If you can't get one of the files is missing, you'll get an exception about all of the computation, right?
Well, actually, you wouldn't get there because this code wouldn't even compile. Because read lines throws a check exception, forcing you to deal with it. The thing is, you would lose all the beauty of this kind of pipeline of transformations, is because you have to do it like a try-catch block here and handle it in a really ugly way. So what Vavr offers is something that you have in Scala, which is try. You can try, yeah, I didn't want to mention a dirty word. So try is a monad, as is either and options. So you can wrap this and isolate side effects. And if this fails, you can specify the alternate return value in a really neat way. It's actually there's also pattern matching in Vavr, believe it or not. It works for the Vavr types, but you can extend it. It's not as good as pattern matching in Scala because you cannot seal Java types, so the compiler cannot warn you if you're not testing all the possibilities. But It's actually, for example, you can grab a try pattern match on the success or failure and grab the values, or you can pattern match on the list to grab the list head and the list tail. So it's quite flexible. I don't use this notation that much because this is like a bit too unusual for Java programmers to use. I mean, if it was like Scala people working on Java code, I think this would be reasonably fine, but I think this is a bit too far ahead. Vavr also supplies property-based testing. How many have used property-based testing? So what's the idea of property-based testing? When you're testing, usually you have to specify the test values manually. When you're doing property-based testing, you instead of specifying actual test values, you specify properties, and it's the responsibility of the testing framework to generate the test values for you in a random way, or if you want to supply your own custom generator, you can. But to generate a large number of values to test your logic against a known property. So let's say we have this code, and the property is the square value of any integer is bigger than 0. For any arbitrary integer, the property is that the square value is bigger than 0 and a certain set of time. Do you think this property is correct? There's a subtle error there. Any? Yeah, you could.
No, it's greater equals to 0.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's an attentive student. So it will fail. Will is well, it might not fail because it depends on how the arbitrary integers will generate it. But I think the 0 is always generated, so it would fail for this case. So it will say the property has been falsified after trying 38 different integers with the value 0. So then you can probably work out what's so special about 0. This is not as advanced as other property-based testing frameworks that are out there for Scala because it doesn't yet implement domain shrinking. Domain shrinking is, for example, if it failed for a very large number, it will try to make the property fail with a smaller number, and so on. If it was a list, so instead of, or a string, if it failed with a large string, it would try to find the smallest string that would fail the property. So we don't have that yet. Kind of working on it, but the results have been good so far. So nothing on that. And another goodie. Well, these days with the web and everything, it's pretty common to, you want to grab these lists and using Lombok and Vavr and serialize them to JSON. If you're not, I mean, it just works. You just have to supply the module and it will generate the list. By default, it's a bit annoying because it prints null values. This is more a problem of Json, which is the Json Serialization library that's used. We actually have to set a non-absent property so that null values don't get generated.
Why did they use that as the default instead of having everyone having to set serialization? Good question.
I have no idea. I think the modules don't have the ability to change properties of the mapper. They can only implement the logic. I don't think that the interface is exposed, but I might be wrong here.
Okay.
But I haven't found a way to do that. But again, it's also the default for the Java 8 optional. So if you don't supply the non-absent, it always prints null.
Yeah.
The thing is, the default behavior is not really what should be happening.
Yeah.
I think it should be the other way around. If you wanted to have null, you would have to set the property and not
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit annoying. So we've gone through the boring slides, and now let's do some kind of live coding and see how far we go with this. Questions before we start hacking it?